Good morning, YouTube.com. We are here with Fred McNeil.
Hey, good morning. How are you? Welcome Horn Lake High School. Let's see it.
All right, now we are doing this little brief interview for our YouTube channel because we wanted to get to know you a little bit better. All right, everybody knows Mr. McNeil from EVTV, right? We all love Mr. McNeil. What you might not know is that he is into flying. Tell us about it.
Well, I've been bragging to everybody that this summer, I was going to get my private pilot's license. But the problem is I've been bragging for that since 1973, about 40 odd years ago. And if you look at my logbook, this is a logbook. Every pilot has to keep a logbook. And you can go back here to 1973 when I had 20 hours in a Cessna 172. And since then, in Alamogordo, New Mexico, I'd get a few more hours. In Europe, I'd get a few more hours. In Austin, Texas, a few more hours. So this last summer was the summer I was going to get my private pilot's license. So my trainer just happens to be my son, who's a pilot that flies commercial. So he'd come back on the weekends and we'd fly and he'd train. It was kind of a different situation when you're the student, like all of us are sometimes, and here's my instructor is my son. So he had to be in one way very polite to me, which was kind of nice. But in any way, the summer went well. I didn't quite get my pilot's license, but now I'm still continuing, and I'm trying to fly on the weekend and then 1 or 2 times during the week. And hhopefully here within another month or so, I will have my private pilot's license and will be flying the friendly skies. But if I was a 16, 17, 18-year-old student in Horn Lake High School, and I wanted to get a good job that's kind of an adventure, that I would probably look into commercial flying. And AirVenture at Olive Branch has an excellent program, and there's other programs all along everywhere. One particular one is Delta State's got an aviation program, and I think University of Tennessee at Martin has an excellent education program. So if you're looking for something kind of exciting, a little bit different, takes a lot of math, takes a lot of concentration, a lot of hard work, try looking into the aviation industry, in particular, try and be a pilot.
Tell me about this summer was the first time I ever got to fly in a small private plane. Got to take my family up over central Mississippi and fly around with a friend, and he actually flew out of Olive Branch. Olive Branch is apparently a very, very popular private airport with lots of private planes. Where do you fly out of?
It's a Olive Branch. It's a public airport. The Federal Aviation Administration, the government provides a control tower and a runway that's about 6,000 feet. And there's a bunch of private planes there, and some commercial planes come in there, and they've got a program for flying with AirVenture. So that's a hub of aviation right around here, is to go to Olive Branch to that airport and in DeSoto County and do that.
So lots of private planes are there.
Right, a lot of private planes.
It was a very interesting experience, and for those of you who've never had that opportunity before, I encourage you to, if it does ever come up where you're able to do that, it is a totally different experience than being on a commercial flight.
Here's the play-by-play. When you first get in the plane, and you're the pilot or the passenger, like Mr. Lewis was, and you get in the plane and the doors kind of close shut, and there's no air conditioning in these particular planes. It might be a little hot, and you go down to the end of the runway and you make your radio calls. And it was just me in the plane and probably Mr. Lewis.
Right, and you wear headsets because it's very loud in those planes.
You might think this is Mickey Mouse, but here's your headset right here, and you can talk to the world. And in fact, the world talks back to you. Sometimes they don't say very polite things, but when you get in the plane and you're running down the runway and you pull the throttle full in and you're holding the yoke and your feet are on the rudder pedals and you hear that whine of that plane, that tremendous power, that big 172 engine whirl like a hummingbird, boom, and then all of a sudden you go gradually down the runway faster and faster and faster, and then under your control you pull back on that yoke, the nose goes up, and you lift off into the sky like a bird. And from there, it's technical of what you got to do and how you got to do it, and you got to obey the rules and laws of aviation. But it's an exciting thing to be able to do those things, do a little slow flight, to do steep turns, to do a navigation for a long distance flight. Maybe for me, it was to Tupelo or to Jackson, Mississippi, and back. and do all that solo with no one else in the plane, just you and the hum of the airplane looking out at the beautiful scenery around you.
And that's another thing about the small planes that I took away from my flight, was that on a commercial flight, you're looking out of a tiny window, even if you get a window seat at all.
You're lucky.
And in a small plane, you can see all around, and it feels more like you're actually flying.
Right. Oh, you're there. My son took us one time to the Mississippi River, just up and down the river, and to get from Olive Branch to the river, you have to go across Memphis International Airport. So he's on the radio, and he uses a term to talk to the air traffic controller. He says, "Jeff, I'd like to go between the numbers." And between the numbers is, here's the international airport, here's the 747s and all the FedEx planes coming in, and here we fly in our little bitty Cessna 170, right between the runway with 747s and DC-10s and L-111s landing left and right, and we're going on a little plane right over the center of the runway to visit the Mississippi. But the view was tremendous. He gave it to us for a Christmas present. And my wife and I went up and down the Mississippi. I have to tell everybody that's my fifth wife. But we went up and down the Mississippi River a number of times, and it was really enjoyable. The view is tremendous, and the feeling of being out and free is also there too.
One other interesting thing that I found out about doing a small flight like that, small airports, most of them are not manned by air traffic controlling. Like, they're sort of just a runway with nobody there, and sometimes a gas station with a pump.
You got it absolutely right. There's a gas station, a pump. When you come in, you fly into one of those, you have to announce yourself. You might say, Fayette traffic, this is Cessna 48652 on final coming into the runway or whatever, but you announce it and everybody else in the pattern just says, oh, that's that plane, and you kind of watch out for each other. But you're absolutely right. A lot of airports, there's nobody there, just the runway and a fuel truck and maybe a car to rent, something like that.
Right, and one thing I noticed was all those small planes would circle those airports once or twice just to make sure there was.
You're right. You kind of go across
nobody.
The numbers, you check in, you make sure nobody's there that might be of danger to you, or you might be of danger to them, and then you do your thing. But you always announce what you're going to do if you're on base or final or downwind or taking off or leaving the pattern. So. Right,
and in central Mississippi, I asked the pilot, I was like, why are you circling this thing twice? He said, to be quite honest with you, I want to make sure there's not a cow or an animal on the runway.
That's absolutely true. Sometimes foxes and everybody else get on the runway just like you run over deer. You wouldn't run over deer in your car, but the deer might get in your way. And if that happens, same thing happens on runways. So you have to be watchful of what's on and off the runway.
He also had an iPad in the cockpit, and it would show all of the little airports all over the state of Mississippi and the gas prices at the airport. And so it was interesting because the gas prices in Carthage, Mississippi, which is where I happened to be, was much lower than everywhere else around. So there were several planes that were flying in, and all they did was taxi right over to that gas pump. They would put their credit card in and then fill it up.
Yep, that's one of the things about flying. We always go back to Olive Branch to get the gas. If you're in another place, you got to watch the prices of gas because it's aviation fuel. It's L110 is the brand of the fuel. It's kind of like regular gas, but it's leaded. Doesn't have, or it has lead in it.
When you're getting your license, you said that you have to fly so many hours. Is there a test also that you're going to have to take?
You have to take the ground school test and a practical test. Well, there's really 3 tests. The first one is just a basic ground school test, and it's about 100 questions. And it's the basic aviation information that you need to know. The second one is when you're with your evaluation, and it's about a 2-hour sit-down with your evaluator, and they verbally go through everything that you should know. And then after that is the actual practical test where you go up and fly the plane with the evaluator and get checked off. So that's what I hope to do. I've already got the academic test completed. I just need to do the other 2, and hopefully here within about a month we'll have that done.
And how many hours are you supposed to have on a plane before you get your license?
I think the minimum amount of hours is 55 for your private pilot's license, and most of us go a few more hours. Like I might have about 150 hours by now after 40 years of experience trying to fly. But the other things after your private pilot's license, you go on and get your instrument license, and then you get a commercial license, and then you get a CFI, a certified flight instructor license, and then you get a multi-engine license. And after you get all those, and you get about 1,500 hours, then somebody calls you up from Delta or United and says, hey, we'd like you to fly or get trained to fly our jets. which is a tremendous thing, a tremendous opportunity.
Awesome. Well, if you want more information, again, drop by B11 and come talk to Mr. McNeil. You can also talk to your counselors. Like he said, Delta State has a fantastic aviation program.